Casey.
And I'm Corey.
And we are the Wright Brothers. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Tech Corner.
And in this edition, we're going to be doing something that we do each January, where we take a look back at last year. We take a look at 2008 and see what were some of the biggest tech stories that happened over last year. And then we get to take a look forward into 2009 and give our predictions for what will be the biggest tech stories of 2009.
Great, so a lot of fun stuff to cover. Let's start by taking a look at our predictions from last year. Corey, you had as your big prediction for 2008, what you thought the biggest tech story of the year was going to be was free. Explain to us what you meant by that, and then score us. Tell us how you did.
Free. What I thought we were going to see is I thought that we were going to start to see free mobile services. So your internet service, I thought your cable service, I thought your wireless, your cell phone service. I thought that we would start to see, at the very least, a significant decline in the prices, and at the very most, I thought that we would actually even see free. And what I thought this would be replaced with would be advertising, in essence, direct marketing. With all the information that they have on us, because they know where we are, they know what our trends are and what our buying patterns are, they can start to directly market to us. And I thought that that type of advertising would replace the service fee. I don't think we saw very much of that at all. I'm going to have to score myself probably about a 2 there. Not to say that I don't think that we will see this emergence in the future, but I think that we're a little farther off than I had thought. So we will see free services replaced with marketing, but probably not even in 2009, probably looking more towards 2010.
In other words, your prediction was so good that it was actually a few years in advance.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
So let's take a look. Casey, you thought that we would view TV in a fundamentally different way in 2008. How'd you do?
I think, well, first of all, I should explain a little bit what I meant by this. And what I meant is that what you saw at the beginning of 2008, or at least what I saw, is you had a lot of these models on television. A lot of television was starting to get some computer functionality where you could access the internet, where it was playing with some of the blogs that were going on there. And then you started to see on the computer that there were a lot more television viewing options. And I thought, this is just natural. This is going to converge in 2008, and we are going to be watching our computer, or playing on our computers and watching TV at the same time on the same device. Now, I don't feel like that really happened in 2008. I think we moved closer in that direction. I think you certainly saw with the Olympic coverage where they had those 10,000 hours of live coverage on the NBC website, the Hulu website, NBC's media viewer has become a big deal. So we're getting closer, but I can't score myself an A on this. I can't give myself a 10 on this. There's no way. I'd have to say I'm more of a 4 or a 5 on this. I think it's moving in the right direction, but we certainly didn't see that climax that I thought we would. So hopefully us both missing our predictions doesn't destroy your confidence in our predictions for 2009. We'll try and do a little better this year, I promise. So let's take a look at what actually ended up being the biggest stories of 2008. Corey, why don't you tell us what was the biggest story of 2008?
In my opinion, it was the emergence of mobile applications. The applications that we have on our cell phones and our PDAs, whether it be your iPhone or your BlackBerry. I think that when the iPhone came out back in 2007, one of the biggest features to it was added in 2008, which was the App Store. And it was where third parties could now start to create essentially programs that you would have on your phone that would do different things, from productivity tools to games to all sorts of different entertainment and food type things, where you could really start to anything that you wanted to do with your phone, any sort of information that you wanted to be able to pull, you could start to do now with these mobile applications. And I think that after the Apple Store had so much success, we saw BlackBerry create their own application store. We saw Google create their own application store. We're now starting to see each of the different individual cell phone carriers create their application stores, so that we can really start to do anything that we want with our phone. In my opinion, that was clearly the biggest tech story of 2008.
So in 2007, the biggest tech story was essentially the iPhone. In 2008, the biggest tech story was officially the iPhone. Should we just stop this podcast right now and say, until 2015, the biggest story is going to be the iPhone?
I think that it was that other carriers started to catch on and started to really duplicate what the iPhone was doing. But more, it wasn't so much with Apple, it was outside of Apple. It was the developers that were actually creating these programs and selling them through the iStore, particularly made for the iPhone. But I think it was what other people were doing that made it so special.
Absolutely.
Case, why don't you talk to us about what you felt the biggest tech story of 2008 was?
Okay, and this might be a little bit that I'm kind of cheating here, but I really feel like the biggest tech story of 2008 were all the stories that didn't take place, the non-stories. And I think this is really headlined by the whole Microsoft Yahoo merger, which, I mean, that thing dragged on for 6 months and never happened. Google and Yahoo were supposed to pair up. That never happened. You had the whole Blu-ray HD DVD wars that ended, and supposedly that was going to be some huge boom for the Blu-ray technology. That never happened. The big Spectrum auction, which was supposed to be a big deal, that never happened. I mean, for me, 2008 was a year of a lot of stories that almost happened and it never really ended up. And I think all of this is kind of can be subcategorized under the biggest story of 2008, which of course was the faltering economy. And I think that what you had in 2008 is a lot of these technological companies started taking a look. They started feeling that reality of kind of a shrinking economy, and they started sidelining some of their projects. They stopped merging. They stopped releasing new products. And throughout 2008, and especially the tail end, it was almost a complete stalemate. Nothing really happened.
Right.
So for me, that was the biggest story of 2008.
The non-story is great.
Exactly.
Cheater. So let's take a look into the future. Let's pull out our crystal balls and talk about what we feel like are going to be the biggest tech stories of 2009. Casey, why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, I think the biggest tech story of 2009 is going to be a story that's not just going to reach technology, it's going to reach everything. And I think that's renewable. I think the word renewable is going to become a huge buzzword in 2009. And you've already started to see this with a lot of the energy stuff. We're starting to think about more renewable energies, renewable cars. But I think that's going to start to trickle down into computers, into technology, into phones. And I think you're going to start to see a lot bigger concentration on creating computers and phones that use renewable materials so they're not harmful to the environment, that use renewable energy sources. Intel just came out with this amazing new power source which runs, doesn't require you to use a battery. It's a renewable zinc fuel source, and they just prototyped that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff on the horizon where it looks like we might have computers at the end of 2009 that are much more self-reliant, much more renewable, and don't require us to keep taking them in, getting them fixed, always having them plugged in. That's really what I'm hoping to see in 2009. So Corey, why don't you tell us, what is your biggest story going to be in 2009?
I think that we're going to see the word subscribe replace the word buy. And what I mean by this is I think that we're going to start seeing ourselves subscribing to a lot more services online rather than buying programs or buying different things. You look at even like a movie rental type thing to where people are now subscribing to subscribe movies rather than buying movies.
Right.
And I think that we're going to see that a lot with the way that we deal with programs and the way that we deal with technology as well. There's so much possibilities with to be able to store information online, whether it's our database or whether it's our email or whether it's different our programs or even backing up our system, that we can start to subscribe to something online that it's this whole idea of what's called cloud computing, where we've got things that we can access from anywhere because they're stored online. They're essentially stored in a virtual or a digital cloud. And I think that that's what we're going to see. We're going to start to see ourselves subscribing to services rather than buying programs. I hope that wasn't too technical, but and hopefully by the end of 2009, that won't seem very technical at all.
It'll make a lot more sense. And I think, I really agree with you on this. I think this is going to be a big deal because I think some of the business concerns are really going to converge on this. You start to see that, in a tough economy, it's a lot easier to pay a $5 monthly subscription fee than to pay the $100, upfront fee. And I think that companies are starting to wake up to that. And of course, in the long term, if you can keep that customer for several renewal cycles, that ends up being more profitable for the company in the long run.
Certainly, it meets the short-term demands of the consumer and the long-term demands of the business, and certainly in an economy like this. So that's what I see as being the biggest tech story of 2009. Hopefully, we can do a little bit better this year with our predictions than we did last year. But I think that we've got some good ideas here, and we really want to encourage you guys to look out there and see what are the big tech stories going on. Try and involve yourself, and just like we do, I think it's very important to understanding how technology works.
Right, and either way, we will meet you back here in 12 months and see exactly how we did. But now I'd like to kind of transition into a new part of the podcast. This is a part of a podcast what we're going to call the Shameless Wright Brothers Plug. And essentially, this is where we ask not what the podcast can do for you, but rather what you can do for the podcast, or really us. And so what we'd really like to ask you to do this time, if you take a few seconds, we really want we want to get our comment section going on YouTube. We really want to get a very vibrant comment section. So if you're watching this video right now, would you do us a favor and take some time to make a comment on this video? And here's what I'd like you to do. Tell us what you think the biggest story of 2009 is going to be, and hopefully we can get a really interesting discussion taking place on our YouTube page.
Certainly, we'd love to start to hear a little bit more of your feedback on our podcast. That's all we have for you on this edition of Tech Corner. We'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.